who would live on an eco community? What is the age of the people that would live on a community? Are they all permanent? Is there some temporary? What does that look like?
I think you need a mix of different ages and different cultural backgrounds, different skill sets. I think all of those things make a really big difference. So if you want to have a healthy eco community, you need tradespeople in there.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to Roots to Roost, the new podcast from Seeds for Eco Communities. Today we have our second guest, Robin Skeates. He is a water resources engineer, and he's also a board member at Seeds for Eco Communities. So today we're going to talk about what, Laura?
Today we are going to be talking about the how to do's of eco community living, an exciting topic. Welcome, Robin. It is so great to have you joining our podcast. Robin is a longstanding friend of mine and team member at Seeds for Eco Communities, and excited to have him on board today. Lots of interesting topics to cover. So first, maybe starting a little bit with processes. So Robin, what exactly are the types of processes involved in establishing an eco community?
Well, I think there are a number of different things. I mean, when I came, I have to say, as a young person, I came to community development just through my family's work and what they did. And what I learned through the process over the years is it's a grassroots thing. It really, the community development takes place with the people that are in it and the environment that they're set in. And so if you want to develop something along a sustainable eco community, you really need to understand the land that you're wanting to have your community live in. You need to understand what opportunities it presents and limits or challenges it presents. And you need to understand, what is the long-term vision for this community? Who are the people you want in this community? What is the municipality that you're involved in? What are the zoning bylaws that are involved? There's a whole host of different things that come into play, and how large you want this community. The population matters. How big is a piece of land? All of those things matter depending on what it is that the vision for the community is based on the land. The land will tell you what it can sustain.
That's really interesting. And just to dig a little bit deeper into the topic around the land. So when you're having a look for a piece of land to develop an eco community, I've seen them around the world in different types of settings, often very rural, sometimes urban. What kind of things would you look for in land for an eco community? I'm curious.
Well, given that I'm a water resources engineer, my first thing is about integrated watershed management. So I look at a piece of land and how it fits into a watershed context, which could be a catchment of a sub-watershed. So understanding how that area of land situates in a watershed, and how can you develop an eco community in that watershed? How are you making sure that you're part of enhancing that watershed as opposed to impacting it in an adverse way? Those are key things in my way. So I look at a one water approach, and that means, am I looking at drinking water, stormwater? Am I looking at wastewater, groundwater, and all of those things also based on the land? So if I'm in the Canadian Shield versus an area where there's lots of sand, those present different opportunities. So it's very difficult to do, for instance, a septic system or do a well if you're sitting on the Canadian Shield and you have rock underneath your feet. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but it means that you have to turn to different types of technologies, whether it means surface water for your drinking water, or you have to come look at ways of either sending your wastewater offsite or treating it above ground. So there are the land will tell you what it can and cannot do, but I like to look at it from a one water approach, which is all of those different aspects of water that I just mentioned. Sand, in my view, is the best because sand is like a giant filter. So you can drill a well and pull up water, depending how deep down it is, the groundwater table, and you can treat with a septic bed, which is really important. If you have a sand soil condition, that's wonderful for a septic system. But then that may have some impacts if you want to do some agricultural aspects. So you're going to have to give some consideration about how that soil type might impact some of the opportunities you're looking for on the agricultural front or sustainable food harvesting programs you want to create for the community.
I love the one water approach, very much kind of close to my heart as far as a lot of the work that I have the privilege of doing with Indigenous community and trying to look at the environment and the water in that holistic way. So when we take that concept of one water approach in an eco community setting, I'm just wondering if you could like elaborate a little bit more on an example of sort of an up north scenario. You're on the rock, there's not sandy soil. What would a one water approach look like in that kind of environment with the cold winters and everything that we have?
Well, again, that would present challenges. So you'd need to know, if I was going to look at a piece of land, what is going to be my drinking water source? So am I now going to have to go to a municipal water source? Do I have water on my piece of land that I can access, like drinking water that can come from a lake or a river? A river or a lake can pose quite a few challenges in terms of drinking water. So there's a number of provincial regulations that govern drinking water, and you need to be up to speed on those. So your best source of water is always groundwater. That's usually the best in terms of water quality. But if you're looking at above ground and you're looking at having to access surface water, you may have to look at options of pumping that water to maybe a storage system that's above ground, or you're going to have to do ultraviolet and sediment control. So there are different aspects or different technologies you're going to have to look at to treat the raw water before the community can use it. And that could be regulatory headaches that are involved. So, and I shouldn't say headaches, but challenges that are involved. So when you're looking at an eco community, you want to reduce the number of permits that you require and environmental compliance approvals. And you want to look at a piece of land that you're going to be able to get the maximize out of it. So for me personally, I would probably not try to pick something that is all on Canadian Shield, but maybe it could be a blend where some of it's on a Canadian Shield and some of it isn't. So that's a possibility.
I would be remiss if I don't take a moment and give a bit of a shout out to our team at the university as well. So we've been working together over the last few months on what is called a capstone project. So what this means is we've had a team of 5 from the University of Guelph who have come together and they've co-developed a really detailed guide on how to start as well as maintain an eco community. So that's a really interesting and great resource to bring together for some of the work that we do and others do around the world on eco community living. So related to some of the topics Robin's already touched upon here and some other areas as well. This guide looks at site selection, sustainable infrastructure planning, the different types of energy, water, wastewater that you need, as well as food and the economy. And it also takes that connection and relationship to nature and having that circular vision, whether you're looking at water, waste, or just how to live collectively together in a community. And then I guess the other thing just wanted to point out that this guidance touches upon is it looks at things like the people and the governance and decision making that needs to be considered when you're putting together and maintaining an eco community. So we will get a little bit more to the people because the people side of things is an important piece of the pie.
Absolutely.
But definitely just wanted to give a big thank you to this team. And if they're listening today, just thank you so much. We really value your contributions towards this important movement. So to our listeners, stay tuned for the release of future resources to reflect some of the good work.
There were some key things in that one too, Laura, which are very interesting. They talked about gray water systems and black water systems. So those are important aspects in you talked about rain harvesting as well. So if you're looking to capture, rainwater or precipitation and using that for, let's say, a garden or a greenhouse, the guide has some really great information in there regarding that. And same for gray water systems. And gray water systems would be something that's, let's say, for laundry or for shower or for just the things that do not include sewage. So your toilet flushing, that would be black water. And all three of these require different considerations in terms of reuse, if you want to reuse any of them. So they all require different treatment processes. So, and the students did a very good job in the guide to tackle these three topics. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them on that and say thank you.
So when we're thinking about the people, let's talk about the people for a minute here. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are around who would live on an eco community. What is the age of the people that would live on a community? Are they all permanent? Is there some temporary? Like, what does that look like? Can you provide a bit of a sharing of your thoughts on this one?
Basically, I would say it's all of the above. In my view, and it's interesting. I think you need a mix of different ages and different cultural backgrounds, different skill sets. I think all of those things make a really big difference. So if you want to have a healthy eco community, you need tradespeople in there, people that know how to look after and maintain and build. So that means bringing in people that have experience in the plumbing, electrical, carpentry, HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. All of these different aspects are really important to bring in, and other trades that are involved that you would want to have your doors open to. And I agree that it would be a mix of permanent and maybe people that just want to stop and then spend a year or two in the community, or 2 or 3 years in a community. So I think it's a very dynamic situation and fluid. I think that having older people in the community, more mature people, helps give some wisdom and some guidance and direction. Um, and and younger people help give the vitality and get and help with the action items that need to take place in looking after a community. So I think that you need a really wide range of different skills. You need people that know how to cook, people that know how to farm and harvest food, or people that know how to do organic farming or greenhouse operations. So you have a wide range. You need technical people to treat the water or to deal with the water infrastructure, solar panels, wind turbines, if you choose to go the direction of green infrastructure, or geothermal systems. All of these things come into play. You may want a forced air heat pump mixed in with a geothermal system. You may want a battery storage system of some sort. Doesn't have to be the traditional one with a lithium battery. It could be something that runs on solar, a passive solar system, or wind, that then has a pump attached to it, and you have a cavern and water goes into it, and you pump the water up in the evening, or during the daylight, and when you have the sun going, and at nighttime you run the water back down and run turbines to create electricity for use in the evening time. So that's just another form of battery storage. So there's the whole wide range of items for one to consider. And one of the things that one also needs to consider, which we haven't really touched on, it's also transportation, whether that's bicycle or by foot or vehicle. So all those things have to be brought into consideration when we're looking at an eco community. I think it's very dynamic. And you think about all those different people and their experiences and how they intermix. So, and for me, a big chunk of that is a community center. I think ultimately an eco community would want to have some form of a community center where activities can take place for the common good of the community. Though we may have separate lodgings for people that they where they live and have their privacy.
So maybe clarify what you mean by transportation. So I think when laymen like myself maybe think about that, we think about like an eco community, people are walking and they're riding bikes. Are you including more so logistics, transportation of goods in and out of the community, more than how somebody gets from their home to the paycheck?
Yeah. So when we did our business plan for considering an eco community, we even included thoughts for potentially having a charging station and the community having an electric vehicle. So it would be something that could be used by the community for exactly what you were talking about, bringing in goods from off-site. Maybe we need to bring in lumber, or we need to bring in, there are various things that may need to be brought to help develop the community. It could be concrete, it could be a wide range of different, products that are needed to build your eco community over time. So those are things that need to be considered. Electricity, I mean, you have to when you're thinking about that, you need that electricity. So the energy plays a big part if you're going to have an electric vehicle. So where's that going to be hosted? And then, and again, we did talk about like walking and bicycling, but it's really important that if you have a nice piece of land, you want to have pathways through the land. You want to minimize your impact to the land, but you also want people to engage in the land. So you need to create pathways where people can go. Maybe they want to do harvesting in the woods, or there's like fields. Maybe they have sheep or goat. There's different approaches depending on what the land offers you. So, and you may need to get to those fields, right? So all of those things may bring in different types of transportation that you need to give consideration to. And if you have elderly people, maybe you need a small vehicle that can move people around, like a golf cart that you can charge, that can move people around in the community along pathways. So it's just something else to keep in your mind, depending on the needs of the people, because you could have disabled people or vulnerable people or elderly, or it's a wide range, right? So you have to really take all those things into consideration when developing your community.
Definitely lots of things to think about. And where my head went, Robin, with the different things an eco community has to think about, but also has to offer, was around emergency management, because I've had the opportunity recently to do some volunteering in this space with the province. And just thinking about, not only planning for that community in events that happen, but also what role could that community play in supporting its broader community during those times when there's maybe power outages or limited resources, supplies, support, expertise, medical, all these different things that we talked about. So that's where my head went there, which is really interesting. Um, One other thing in the sort of creativity and innovation space I thought we could talk about is technology.
Yeah.
And I know this one is near and dear to Robin's heart. We've had many long, long conversations together about innovative technologies, and he is always sharing with me so many amazing things that are just on the cusp around emerging technologies that are helping with Mother Earth and all that great stuff. So when we talk about technology in the eco community setting, can you talk a little bit about the types of emerging technologies that might sort of align well with that type of lifestyle?
Yeah, and I think there needs to be, there's two streams of thought on that. One is you want to keep low tech where possible, because the higher tech you go, the more maintenance that you require and specialty you require. So there's the low maintenance side of things. And then, as you're saying, there's also emerging consideration, like a lot of things around the irrigation systems. So collecting water, rain harvesting systems to collect into cisterns. And then you have a cistern that has to be managed in a way that, because even though the water's in the cistern, it doesn't just sit there. It actually it's a living organism. The water will have all sorts of microbes in it, and there'll be algae that forms. There's lots of different things that take place. So there's a balancing act that takes place in terms of dealing with water. And so you need to be thinking about, okay, how do I keep the water healthy for its intended purpose? If its intended purpose is going to be for, let's say, for a greenhouse, so there's lots of different types of greenhouses that you can do at a fairly inexpensive way, but many of them maybe are good for 9 months instead of for the full year, but you could have them working for 9 months. That's something you want to take into consideration. If you look at the Netherlands, they have now reached a point where they have soilless greenhouses. They basically have bare roots, and they control the environment inside the greenhouse to the point where all the nutrients and moisture are controlled through computers and equipment. I don't think we're going to be looking at that for an eco community, but I want people to be aware that that is what's coming. We're seeing that happening even here in Canada. They're bringing that technology in from MIT, Michigan Institute of Technology. They're doing a lot of work in that area. And as I said, the Dutch farmers are way ahead of us in terms of that type of technology. But we should be looking at opportunities here. I visited a plant actually in southwestern Ontario where they were next to corn ethanol plant, and they created the greenhouses next door, and they pumped the carbon or the carbon dioxide that was a byproduct was pumped into the greenhouses. And then that improved the efficiency of the plants by about 7-8%. So they have a higher carbon atmosphere, but the plants can tolerate it and actually grow faster. So there's a lot of different opportunities to look at things like that. If I'm looking at technology on the solar front or wind front, that is constantly changing. When we first started, it was at about 15% efficiency of the sun's energy. I think we're up to somewhere around 22 or 24% of the sun's energy is now captured by solar systems, and they're constantly evolving and improving. Wind turbines. I think there's room for wind turbines. You could use them not just for creating electricity, they could even be used like a pump system to draw water out of the ground like they used to be used 100 years ago. So there's opportunities there as well. But with those also comes requirement to maintain and look after. And some places now will use solar, do a solar farm and actually have like sheep that graze underneath. They're designed on the landscape in a way where you can actually do farming in between the panels. And they can even have sheep in there that will maintain or keep the grass short. So there's lots of different opportunities for coexistence between technology and nature.
I remember a couple of years ago visiting an eco community in the prairies in Canada, and they had used, it's interesting what you say around kind of the pumping the water in different ways. They taken the little motor off of the windshield wiper washer in junkyards and car junkyards and used that to pump their water. Lasted a few years, and then when it needed to be replaced, they would just go and get another little motor from there. So I always thought that was like a really neat, innovative, and simple way to help support some of the community needs.
And that goes to circular economy. That goes to sustainable and low tech. And so I applaud that. That's been creative in my books. I would say that the biggest challenge, quite frankly, and Laura and I have been looking at this, is really at the municipal level. You need a municipality that has built into their official plan the type of zoning that allows you to have the flexibility to develop these types of communities. So there's a lot of restrictions. So depending on the zoning and how that zoning is defined, you're handcuffed based on what you can and can't do. So one of the things that we've been pushing for is to create a zoning bylaw specific to eco communities. So that is something. In a lot of municipalities, I said, well, we can't do it right now because it's not in our official plan. But when we do our next official plan, we can have that conversation. So one of the things that we're hoping to do is to get there's a municipality where we're hoping will consider this type of zoning. And if we can get one done or off the ground, then that will open the door for others to say, hey, if this municipality's done it, we can just see what they've done and work with that. So that's the thinking that we have at the current moment. Always remember that, like Seeds for Eco Community, as I understand it, our job is to really help try and establish the communities. But we're looking to do multiple communities. So we just want to get the first one up and running. And we're going through the process, which is, the first one's always the hardest. But once you've got the first one done and you've got all those pieces worked through, you will be able to show that as the pilot for other communities to say, hey, you know what, we can do that. And you're right, it does make sense. I think most municipalities would like to go that direction. They just haven't quite figured out how to do it. Well, I'll say too, is partly the provincial government. I worked for 10 years in environmental compliance approvals for stormwater, storm sewers, stormwater management systems for sanitary sewers, water mains, pumping stations. A lot of times, and then later in my career, probably about 8-9 years ago, I was brought in to try and help companies like from the Netherlands or from other places, Denmark or from European countries, from wherever, to come in and how could they go through an approvals process in Ontario. And my job was to show them, like, how do you navigate the approvals process? And what it came down to is when you're going through that process is you need to have something that is not innovative. This is the part people haven't understood about an approvals process. When engineers or the approval people come to look at the technical information, they need to understand that it's based on first principles. That design is something that can be understood and replicated, and we have faith that it's going to function as designed. So if you come in and you start saying, oh, we've got this revolutionary idea, we have this amazing design, you've got alarm bells going off everywhere. And so I would tell people, it's not that you're coming in with some amazing new revolutionary thing. What it is you're taking existing technology and you're putting it together in a way that's very innovative and is, I don't want to say revolutionary, but is innovative and creative. And you're getting much better results as a result of the way you're putting it together. Then you get buy-in. Then people can say, oh, I understand. You're still using the same engineering design principles or standards. You're just putting it together in a unique way. And the output at the end of the day is still something that we know will function and is reliable and will give you a consistent quality that you state that you can meet. So if there's a mindset involved that you need to have when you're going in to get approvals from federal or provincial or municipal bodies, you have to keep it to something that they can recognize and understand. So it's just a little insight that I'd provide.
And I just want to highlight the importance and value and rankings that municipal action can take. For those who have been kind of following the tiny house movement in Ontario, we've seen how to build and buy tiny house move into guidance and now be part of the building code. We've seen changes in, gray water reuse, ways to use composting toilets, all these different elements of the pie. But now, as Robin highlighted, it's really the municipality's turn. It's the local community's turn to really show and demonstrate how this can happen on a broader scale to knit these pieces together. And wanted to give a shout out to Chris Magwood and the Endeavor Center. I know Robin and myself have done a number of courses there and in and around green building and all these different pieces. But one of the great things that he did with his learning is each year he would pick something that is transformative, innovative, and not in the building code. And he would find a partner municipality, he would do a 6-month course, and he would build a building with that, and he would demonstrate at that level. Because the reality is, I've seen it time and time again, as soon as it's in one bylaw, one official plan at a municipality, it's much easier for another municipality to adopt that. So that's exactly what we're trying to do with the pilot eco community here in Ontario. And it's great to see other leaders like Chris kind of moving the yardstick into different pieces in this way, because it really is coming to action at that local level. And to your point, Frank, you're right. There's all this momentum. There's this need for affordable housing for protecting the earth, but it's just about those laws catching up. And to your point, Robin, about the culture changing and seeing this as a real viable and sustainable solution.
You have to demonstrate that you've done your homework and that you've got the planning in place, that you have a proper business plan and you've got, like, the marketing is there. You need to be able to market your idea and say, hey, the people that are going to be living in this community, these are upstanding people that are adding value to the community. Like, these are people that are going to be able to build. These are tradespeople. These are different people in different ways. And yes, there are some vulnerable people in here, but that's part of our responsibility is to work with that. But we have a cooperative. How is this different from a cooperative or from a condominium? Maybe, in the countryside, that's a bit harder to follow. But in the city, most people know what a condo or a cooperative is. And there are many of them. They're all over the place, at least in Toronto. So people do understand a condominium structure or a cooperative structure. So the question really comes in is, do you have a concept drawing of what you're trying to achieve that others can look at and say, oh, we understand what you're trying to do. And you can say, hey, we're also working with the local college or the local university or local educational institutions in the area, the Montessori school, whatever that educational structure is that's near the eco community. We're working with them and we're working with other members of the community. We're engaging. We want to be involved, and we're also reaching out to First Nations. So to me, it's like showing that you're willing to reach out and engage in the process and that you're not trying to hide what you're doing. Because I think a lot of the NIMBYism comes from hiding what you're doing. But at the same time, it is a tricky balance because there's a place where you're too open, you're too transparent in your process. but you need to be at least be able to show big picture, 5,000 feet off the ground. This is what we're developing, and this is how it benefits the community. And when you're in trouble, like Laura said before, when there's an emergency, guess what? This community is going to still be functioning because it's largely or completely off the grid. So if there's trouble or people have problems, maybe they're going to be able to come to the community center. So, and it becomes a resource for the community as opposed to, a concern for the community.
I love the conversation of that community hub and also the extension of the broader community, whether it's partnering, with the universities or local Indigenous communities. It's so much opportunity there to weave the connection of that and to actually bring back, like you say, Frank, that concept of community that creates such a wealth of health for so many people. Also, just wanted to share this link that might be helpful to people who are interested around where things sit in Ontario. So the Tiny Town Association have been out talking to all the municipalities across the province. And so this handy map outlines some of the details around which municipalities are open or have available land for eco-community living. So that might give you a sense of where to find some like-minded individuals if that's on your journey path too. So I guess one more thing I just wanted to cover before we close off is around those unseen opportunities. So I know for me personally, when I sort of have a vision of eco communities based on what I've learned on my journey and based on those that I've visited, there's really that sort of reconnection to the child of sort of having that type of living opportunity that is so based in the outdoors and so connected to the outdoors and respectful of that. Also, what comes to mind for me is around sort of the benefits of mental health, which is a significant challenge at many ages and sort of around the globe. And what kind of role, what sort of spin-off benefits could this type of eco-community living have? And I know we have a few blogs around sort of mental health and forest bathing and different resources for people, but just curious either on that topic or other unseen opportunities that you see, Robin and Frank, around eco-community living.
Yeah, there were some things that came out. You're well aware. Probably the most famous of the eco communities is Findhorn, and they've done a lot of work on the agricultural side of things. So they actually grow incredible uh, vegetables, like fruit and vegetables that grow to incredible sizes. They put a lot of time and attention into it. There's a lot of, I'd say like spirituality, but they put a lot of time and attention into it. There was a movement that came out of that, out of Finward, that was basically developed in the United States, and it's called Paralandra. And Paralandra is called soilless gardens, where you can create with nature, co-create with nature, things that you want to create. And it doesn't have to be, a soilless garden could be anything. It doesn't have to be a quote unquote garden as we understand it. It could be anything. It could be a community. It could be a structure. But it's a fascinating concept that I read up on, and I just find it very interesting. And people may find that of interest to look up. So that's one thing. I also wanted to mention too, Laura, one thing that we did look at, excuse me, was around perhaps having a fishing pond, or like again, if you have your community next to an open body of water, a river, or a lake, you could have access to fishing. But you could also have a fishing pond within the community or near the community that you could stock with, with local fish like trout, whatever is local to the area. It has to be an indigenous fish. But that also provides fire protection, right? You could have a pump in there and it would provide fire protection in an emergency as well. So it's just another aspect of the safety. So I just wanted to raise that too when you're talking about outdoors, Laura.
A great point. And then made my mind go back to that innovation side where they have the agriculture growing with the fish underneath it and just the suite of opportunities really in terms of sort of growing your own food that some feel are out of reach, but really they're not. And I love the added connection to around the emergency protection with the water and or even wetlands, learned at a recent conference around beavers, about the importance of beavers and wetlands and how could that play into all of this. I think it doesn't matter what kind of eco community you're starting. At the beginning, you need to have the economic considerations and plan it out. One of the things that's beautiful about eco communities is they're all very unique because there's going to be different people coming together around, some common principles that we've talked about today around the environment and affordable living and that type of thing. But each of them will have their own unique take, right? So like an eco community that's set up for seniors and veterans, some of those exist around the world, and they look a little bit different to communities that have, a broad range and age of people that are really remote versus urban. There's so many different kinds, but I think the economic piece is definitely part of this. It's something that, we need to keep understanding. Maybe it's an area we need to develop some more resources on at the seed to help broaden that understanding. And as we kind of move forward with the communities, get that proper documentation, the risk assessment, the third party analysis from our partner institutions like colleges and universities is an important part of the pie, I think, in terms of widening that adoption to a broader demographic.
There's two other considerations, though, and one is the landscape is going to tell you what can and can't be done there. So that will also dictate not just the people, but the landscape. So do you have grasslands or farmland? Do you have trees? Is it forested area? I mean, what your land is also going to have some influence on what your community can do or not do and who's going to be there. So it's just another consideration. And lastly, from my perspective, we're moving towards lowering interprovincial barriers. So we're currently looking at, okay, how do we get this up and off the ground here in Ontario? Because we are seeing had been a willingness at the provincial level to try and, make some shifts and changes to really, promote affordable housing or housing development. I don't want to say affordable, but at least housing development. And it's opening up some doors somewhat. How's that playing out across Canada? And if we are really looking to drop interprovincial barriers, how is eco-community barriers coming down with that whole initiative?